Hello, everybody, and welcome to the June 28th, 2017 edition of Weekly Manga Recap. It's Nick and Chris here to talk about some manga.
Some manga? Talking about some manga, Nick?
Manga.
And some chowder?
Manga!
Some manga and chowder?
Manga!
That is one of those episodes of Simpsons that is... It's weird to say criminally underrated, because I feel like there aren't many that are, like, underrated. But that is one of the ones that, like, sneaks up on you when you watch the whole thing. Like, that episode is way too funny all the way through.
It was so weird because, like, Simpsons has always kind of been this very, I don't know, I guess you could say kind of, like, comforting thing. Because it's one of those things that's, like, it's just always around. You can always kind of, to get you maybe at least a chuckle here and there. But then occasionally you look back at, you know, the first, I don't know, 6, 7 seasons, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this show was just like the funniest goddamn thing. No wonder people hate New Simpsons.
It's weird because there's people I know now who have grown up at a time where, like, when good Simpsons was around, it just wasn't a thing for them. And they only know the new stuff. And you try to explain it to them, like, no, like, classic Simpsons is great. They're like, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I don't think I'm going to watch it, though. It's just like, no, you don't understand. It was the best thing ever. It is, and it holds up. Most of the jokes are still really funny.
There's an episode, I forget what the entire thing is about, but there's a sequence where, like, Skinner is, like, coming after Bart while Bart's playing hooky. And for some reason, Skinner just turns into, like, the goddamn Terminator during this whole sequence. He, like, like, Bart does something to, like, I don't know, he gets across, like, a stream and then collapses the bridge. So Skinner just, like, walks into the water and then just walks back out the other side.
Yeah. There were so many just, like, perfect moments of, like, references and things like that too. It's the same episode too. It's the Chowder episode, and that's also it's also the one where Skinner has that great line where he's like, "Why there are no kids at the 4-H club either? Am I so out of touch?" No,
it's the children who are
wrong. I can quote way too many Simpsons things to people, and then
it's been around for as long as we've been alive, so.
That is true. It's actually older than I am.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it started in '89.
I mean, I guess if you go into, like, the Tracy Ullman show, then it's like when it kind of gets...
Right, sure, yeah.
But I have no memory of a time without Simpsons. I remember the Simpsons more than my family being together as a cohesive unit, essentially. I have no memories of non-divorced parents, but I have memory, and I don't have memories of a time without Simpsons either. So the Simpsons, you know, actually brings me to a tangent that I shouldn't get into, but it breaks me.
Go right ahead. I actually got to go for a second. So,
and this is actually really sad once I feel like I say it too. But there's a thing that keeps happening to the Simpsons recently. When I catch, like, images of it, it'll show, like, Homer and Marge this season are going to get legally separated. And that, for some reason, breaks my heart because I didn't have, united family in my parents. Like, my parents had split up, so the most stable marriage I had seen to this point, essentially, as a child, was through Homer and Marge. So it just keeps breaking my heart to see that, like, the storyline of Simpsons goes on is, like, to just continue, like, seeing how far of a schism they can create between them without fully breaking them up. And I realized that's why a lot of things in my life are that sad. Because I can relate more to together fictional cartoon couples than my own real parents. If Nick were here, I would let the podcast turn over to him as I stare off into this corner and just try to hold back the tears. But because he's not, I am forced to continue on air as though this realization has not come to me. And now I am desperately searching for some way to change the topic. Oh, hey, Twitch is talking about the hashtag my first sub. So what was your guys' first sub at Subway? I assume it was some kind of cold cut. Oh, God, Nick, come back! I think we're good. I'll just push this down like everything else, and we're going to be fine. Which is weird. It's the transition would have worked actually really easily, too. When we were talking about Simpsons, to the fact that we're going to be discussing a manga recommendation this week that is another comedy. It's not quite The Simpsons, though. It is actually a 4-page Koba series called Tomo-chan no, and then it's gone for me.
Tomo-chan wa Onnanoko.
There you go.
I'm here.
I got really sad when you were gone.
I'm sorry. Four Coma series. It's basically a webcomic. It's like not like the kind of Korean ones that we've done in the past, like Tower of God, the long page format, but just very much just online 4-panel comic strip in the vertical format that pretty much all 4 Coma you're gonna see, and pretty simple, basic comedic premise, which is that there is this tomboy in high school named Tomo, and she has a crush on her childhood friend June, and she basically, I think even before the series begins, she confesses to him, and he doesn't get it. Like, he just doesn't process it at all, because it's not that he sees her as a boy, but he sees her as a guy. As like his best guy friend that he pals around with, and does very heterosexual things with. So
he's stuck in that mindset when you were too young to recognize there was a difference between boys and girls, and it was just your good buddy, essentially. Mm-hmm. So while she's grown up and like grown feelings for him, romantic feelings, he's just like, "Hey, my best buddy, what's going on, bro? Bro. You want to go out and punch stones like we usually do, bro?" And the thing is, she's not against going out and punching stones, but she really wants him to recognize that she has feelings for him.
It's an interesting dynamic that they have, and it gets developed more and more, because this is a series that's been running. It has, like, I think every weekday updates, I want to say. So it's been going for a few years, and there are close to 600 chapters, which are each just a page long, and generally follow the like 4-panel setup punchline format that you get from most comic strips. But there is some character development that happens during it, mostly in terms of the way that they see each other does very gradually change. And you see, for example, that Tomo really likes the relationship that they currently have, but she wants more as well. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, she would really like it if they could, go out and beat up a bunch of gangsters with their super karate training and pal around and stuff. But then she also wants them to hold hands and walk in the park. Yeah. So
there's a large part, since it's a comedy series, there's basically the personality joke that gets kind of put into it. Like we mentioned with Simpsons, a lot of jokes in Simpsons are kind of based around the fact that Homer's a well-meaning as intentions, but very stupid person. In this, the joke is that Tomo is somebody with feelings for June, but she's also very much sort of got a lot of boyish traits to her. And that's kind of part of the reason that she has difficulties kind of getting through to June on certain ways. And then in many ways, it's also just June finds whatever reason he can to just not get it through his head. There's a point, there's a joke early on in one of them where she decides to grow her hair out because she hears from him how he likes girls with long hair. So she grows her hair out and is like, "Hey, June, what do you think of my hair?" He's like, "I really like it. Makes you look like a wandering warrior." And she's just like, "God,
you look like a fucking Ronin. Badass."
Yeah, he's like, "That's so cool, dude." And it's like,
but then you look at her, it's like, well, she did grow it out, but she didn't do anything to stop it, so she does look like that. So
yeah, she basically just has like the wild kind of spiky bed hair all the time, so she just grew that out longer, and it's the same thing. So yeah, it's got that kind of like character gimmick joke that it puts into it. And I was surprised actually how much mileage they managed to kind of get out of it before they had to start like coming up with new scenarios, because for a long time that's just the joke. Every page is some joke about how Tomo, despite doing something, isn't being seen as a woman to June, rinse and repeat. Like, there's some kind of misunderstanding. Like, he'll slap her on the butt, and he thinks it's nothing because he's just like, hey, bro, what's going on? Which is weird. Is that a thing anyone... I mean, I was a guy. I am a guy. I am a guy.
Thing, I guess.
Yeah, I've never had that thing where I've walked by, like, a friend of mine, but I was like, hey, what's going on there, chief? Slap him in the ass. It's like, I was like, I might get football. It happens in that, maybe, in sports.
And they are a couple of jocks because they're karate heads.
Now,
so.
Nick, I'll tell you, though, in my science Olympiad classes after school, while I was building bottle rockets, I can assure you that none of us super tough men slapped each other on the bottom.
It's good to know.
I just want you all to know that.
I love how you were like, you're doing like your most interesting man in the world thing with your monster there. I don't always slap men on the bottom, but when I do.
When I'm at my science Olympiad class studying the different deciduous trees in Pennsylvania, I don't do it.
A lot of it, like you said, is very just simple character focused jokes because you've got Tomo, who's the tomboy, you've got June, who is this just ignorant musclehead, and then you've got Tomo's two other friends. One is the one that she has known for a very long time. She's known her almost as long as she's known June, named Mizuzu. And Mizuzu is this very dark, like I'm sure in Westerns she would be portrayed just flat out as a goth character. Very sardonic with Tomo, but is very sarcastic. And she and June really don't seem to get along well at all. They've just never really gotten along. Except for one time when they briefly dated, which was an odd little story arc that happened. Mizuzu's probably pretty easily my favorite character because a lot of it, everyone else is very much just kind of goofy, and she plays straight man to a lot of people, but at the same time she has a lot of quips to make and stuff.
She is also very close to what I feel is like the Rory of this series, that there is one. Just that girl on the side that's trying to facilitate things happening and has to deal with that one annoying dude who has feelings for her or just keeps trying to force it.
Yeah. They do occasionally have this guy show up named Tanabe who's got a crush on her, and it seems as though every time she spurns him or manipulates him, he just comes back stronger. So, and then you've got Carol, who basically is the Orihime to Tomo's Tatsuki. Like, I can't be the only one who would read this and doesn't see the comparisons there. Tomo is this tomboyish karate expert, and Carol is especially like early Bleach Orihime. Because she's apparently very intelligent, but has such weird social interactions with people and is such an airhead with a weird imagination that you would not be able to tell it looking at her. She's got this perpetual, like, blank expression on her face. Mm-hmm. A lot of the series. Yeah. And also, she happens to be an exchange student, so she's this, I think, half Japanese, blonde.
British.
So, at the same time, she's like a blonde bombshell. Mm-hmm. And most of the series consists of Tomo despairing over the fact that June doesn't see her as a woman, isn't getting close to her romantically, and so Mizuzu and Carol push them closer together, mostly by trying to get Tomo to act more feminine, and her being like, but this isn't me. I don't want to do this. Like, well, but he doesn't see you as a woman, right? Yeah. So you want to be seen as a woman? Yeah. So you should be more like a woman. No! Which is totally understandable. Honestly. It's really difficult to talk about this kind of series, though, because it's such, moments in time kind of thing, as opposed to, I mean, there are story arcs in it, but they're, comic strip story arcs or webcomic story arcs where they'll go on for a few weeks and then you'll just kind of move on to the next one. There's no big, huge overarching plot that happens aside from just the relationship between June and Tomo, basically.
Oh, then Ansem shows up halfway through and the rest of Heartless. But that only lasts a couple weeks and then that stops.
We back on Kingdom Hearts?
Yep. We're never outside of Kingdom Hearts, Nick.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
We're always going to be in Kingdom Hearts. It's always just right off to the side. I'm ready to just transition to it at any point. Yeah, there's not really any long ongoing story arcs, and I didn't get all the way through. I know you, I think, caught all the way up with it. I got through about 120, 140 chapters, whatever you want to call it. So I have a good idea essentially how the story kind of works, but I imagine there are certainly points where it does start to say, like, all right, we'll deal less with just, like, making this chapter about hitting a punchline to this, because we're going to use this as a chapter to start building towards some eventual character development. Because at the point there was still some character development happening. Like, Carol was introduced into the series as somebody who initially thinks that Tomo is someone who's pining after the guy that she's engaged to. So she sees Tomo as a rival and someone she must destroy, and then eventually, over time, realizes, like, she eventually finally catches a scene of Tomo being really angry at June for not seeing her as a woman. And, like, she's like, oh, I get it now. You're fine.
All right.
Our death battle is over. Goodbye.
And Tomo, of course, is just like, what was that about?
Yeah. So there certainly is a place, I feel like, down the line where those things might happen. And I'm curious to actually see how those play out, because at the point I got to, there was only one point where the story ever became somewhat serious for a moment. And I'll be honest, I was not a fan of the way it was handled. There's essentially a scene that happens wherein June and Tomo get on a bus, and Tomo is molested on the bus. And from that, then a couple chapters go about, which kind of discuss different things. And there is, like, a level of, like, hey, when that happens, it's not a joke. And a couple chapters afterwards, it's not particularly a joke. And it's not as though the event itself becomes a joke. It does fall into eventually jokes back to the norm of the series. But it was sort of this weirdly kind of handled thing, because there was still just the undertone that this was all leading to a joke. Like, the end sort of payoff to get to this is a scene where Tomo walks home without spats on underneath her skirt and the wind blows it up. Like, it's something that just felt kind of just weirdly placed. Or not weirdly placed, but just sort of, like, weird in the whole context of the entire, like, chain of events that just felt kind of off as you read it. You're just like, I feel like this could have been done differently, or maybe just not use, like, an active sexual harassment to be the conduit for all of this sort of thing. Like, it just felt too real almost to then be like, all right, now let's build upon this jokes about getting her out of her shorts underneath her skirt kind of thing or whatever.
It's an weird thing, because that's one of the first things that happens that introduces this element where June doesn't see Tomo as a woman most of the time, but if he basically sees guys treating her like a woman, like, they're interested in the way that she looks, or they're trying to hit on her or something like that, he suddenly gets uber protective, which is kind of funny because he doesn't understand why he's acting that way. He's like, Tomo could kick these guys' asses. What am I so worried about? And it is kind of weird that is a big thing that happens because of, molestation. It's, still agree with you there.
By a whole, I don't know how you felt about this. I've in the past said most times we've done a comedy series as a recommendation, I usually end up being like, it wasn't for me. Like, I don't know. There's something about, I guess, the way I've seen most, like, Japanese comedy comics or manga or things like that, or just Japanese comedies in general. It just hasn't clicked with me so much. But I feel like this was one of the few exceptions to that, because I found this to be a legitimately funny series most of the time. It wasn't like every, page, whatever you want to call it, every 4-panel, whatever, was hilarious. But I found myself, even if I didn't laugh, I got the joke and I got the context, and I was like, this is funny. I just didn't think it's as funny as some of the other ones, because there's some really, like, amusing ones, and ones that even play with the whole format they work with as well. Like, there's one where Tomo's, like, leaning back, and this is, I think, when Carol's introduced, and she's just like, I don't get, why is everybody, like, so like enamored when she goes around, and it's like her hopping around and everything like that, and it's just like
boing, boing, boing.
Yeah, like why are all the guys so like just drawn to her? I don't get it. And like the panel pulls away, and you can see she's doing dumbbell curls, and she's just like, I just don't get it. What does she have that I don't? And you're just like, oh, okay. Like it's just a good joke that they use the format to build upon too. So there's moments like that where I'm like, this is just really funny. I totally dig this. I don't know if you had the same thought at all, though.
I mean, first of all, well, I did read through the whole thing, but I also read through it pretty quickly. So I was done with it at some point last week. And like I said, it's got almost daily updates. And so I was actually checking back for updates after I'd caught up with it. So it was like, oh, I want to see the next one, because it's pretty reliably funny series. It's an easy read. And I'm actually now invested in the characters as a result of the humor in it too. You know, the humor gets you into it, but then it does kind of hook you with this plight that Tomo has. The characters are interesting because they're very identifiable, but there's more to them than just the kind of stereotype that you associate with the archetype that they represent. There are some really good things that happen. Like there was one recently where Tomo and June go to, I forget which one it was, but they go to a festival together, and Tomo's all dolled up for it. She's wearing a kimono, and as they're going along, it's obvious even to her that June actually can see her as a woman, and so she's like, "Hey, this is my chance. Like, we're at this great place. The mood is right. He might actually get it if I confess to him at this point." But she starts getting ready to do it and builds herself up to it, and then she thinks, I don't want to do this yet, because if I take this step, then what's happening right now, we can never go back to it. No matter what happens from here on out, the present will stop and the next stage of our life will begin. And I really like the relationship we have right now, so I don't want to do that. And so, first off, it's maintaining the status quo, which is frustrating, but at the same time, it's a very understandable, and
there's a complex.
For someone, it's appropriate, first of all, for someone of that age to get that feeling. Like, I don't want to grow up yet, and it's quite sort of sad, but understandable that she makes that decision. It's like, I don't want to let this go because I'm scared of not getting it back again, even if what awaits us is really great. So, well, and also the same thing kind of is happening a little bit with Mizuzu, where basically there are hints. First off, she might be a lesbian. I'm not sure, but she might be. There have been jokes made. There have been jokes made about Nick's gaydar and how faulty it is, but there's definitely an implication that Mizuzu very greatly values her relationship with Tomo, and she wants to help her friend to be happy by hooking her up with June, but at the same time, and it's actually Carol who keeps pointing this out. It seems as though she also doesn't really want things to change. And you could read that a few different ways. One way, and the most obvious way, would just be, well, maybe she just doesn't want to be the third wheel. Maybe she doesn't want them to get closer to each other and for things to change, because that means that she might be on the outs with Tomo, that she might not have as much time for her. But there's also an implication, because I think that Mizuzu actually acknowledges that at some point and is not acknowledging something else, which is just how ridiculously close she and Tomo are and how protective she is of their relationship.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's weird. I'm going through a couple chapters right now, actually, just as we're going through this, just to kind of get a tone, or get a sense for what the tone is as it is later on. And I will certainly note, most of these pages I've seen are not, they don't end on a punchline. It definitely seems to eventually reach to a point where it just becomes a more slice of life sort of series that follows them and will more often than not tell a joke in there, but doesn't always do that. Like it's telling a story with these characters, and I could definitely see that. And I know some people in the chat were commenting on the notion you just kind of brought up that she might have a essentially romantic feelings for her as well. And there's stuff that's actually kind of seeded into the story early on that kind of plays into that as well. So I could definitely see how these elements kind of take in place. They grow over time and become something very interesting. Because there's a lot of just characters you meet very quickly and early on. Like you do meet, I think it's Tomo's dad, right? Who's the karate instructor.
Right.
So, and then we didn't bring him up too much, but
he's crazy.
What's our karate friend's name? Misuki? Mizuki.
Aki, sorry.
Yeah. So there's a couple characters that I'm sure also get extra context that just kind of go on and on. I don't have as much of a strong vantage point to speak in total on the series because I know that you know more than I do about how this series goes in the long run. So I could say from my point about 130, 100 whatever chapters in, it seems like this was a very enjoyable series that had fun characters who you kind of wanted to follow even if there wasn't a joke being done in that chapter, and that the benefit of it actually just feeling like a legitimately amusing series as well was kind of an added bonus. I don't know how the premise plays out over the span of 500 or so more chapters. Mm-hmm. I don't know how the development goes between them, if it becomes so much so that it changes almost the entire tone of it, and if you came in liking what it was at the start, if you would even like it what it becomes later on. But I can say from where I was, I think if this is a premise that seems interesting to you, it would be worth checking out at the very least, because this is a fun series, and even though the premise kind of has some areas that I think could be explored a little bit more, I do just find like June and Tomo to be genuinely like likable, fun characters. Like you have to like Tomo's just energy in trying to solve things. She's such a good-natured person to a fault. Like anytime someone tries to offer her friendship, she's just like, sweet friends. Like she just has that personality. And June he's never like antagonistically dumb. You get the idea that like maybe deep down he gets it, but he just doesn't at the same time. Like it's like that Zorro joke where he just like saw the one mermaid that was like the granny mermaid, so he's just like, I don't think he just erased that from his memory, like boop boop, and it's gone now. He's like, oh sweet, a mermaid I've seen for the first time, that sort of thing. Like he just has that mentality of like, it's just for whatever reason, logic defied, he can't see her as a woman. And even though there is that, he's still just such a goofy idiot in his own ways that it's fun seeing their dynamic kind of change. Like the chapter where he's just like, she's like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. He's like, oh, I'll go with you. And then like you see them coming out of the bathroom and he has like a lump in his head. He's just like, I forgot. My bad.
I do also like how Tomo and June share the ignorance of normality, kind of, where they just don't understand that the things that they do aren't normal. Because obviously, Tomo gets really hurt when she finds out that Mizuzu and June went on a date briefly. And like they did for like a weekend and then they were done because the day went so horribly. They kind of amicably parted ways, and that was because June's idea of a date was going on this ridiculous workout routine, the kind that he and Tomo would normally go on, where they run for like 3 miles and bike and go and lift weights and all this shit. And Mizuzu's like desperately trying to keep pace with him, and then at the end of it, she's like, "All right, I can't fucking do this anymore. I'm never doing this again with him. I'm just going to break things up before I get in even more over my head." And she goes up to June, and June's like, I don't really want to date you anymore. And he's just like, what the fuck? I got dumped? And so, Tomo's like, oh, that date sounds great. He's like, no.
That's, I think, also part of it, too. It's, as you said, that both Tomo and June have a responsibility in kind of being the ignorant ones to various different parts of things. So I do think that actually is a very important element to add, because I think this would be a different story if everyone in the world got it except for June. But it's the fact that Tomo, as I mentioned before, she's like, I don't get why everyone likes Carol so much, not me.
Well, actually, to be fair to her, a lot of guys do like her because she's got massive tits. So
yeah, but there's also this element that she doesn't get immediately what people are like. She assumes the best in them, but like two girls go to have a talk with her and are like, hey, we need to have a talk outside the gym. And she, of course, is in this mentality as someone who's like grown up kind of like a guy and like is a combat expert. She goes to have this conversation with them. She's in a fighting stance, and
You wanted to fight. That's why you asked me behind the gym, right?
Yeah, they're like, no, we're gonna go after the same guy you are. She's just like,
oh, that means we have to settle this in a fight, huh?
No. She's like, oh, you guys want to go after him? Oh, I'll be able to tell you so much about what he likes. I wish the best for you guys. Like, she just has this. She's straightforward to the same way June is, and I think that's part of kind of what makes them so funny to follow. And like the efforts they have to go through the relationship between them, when you're like, God, you two are just so disgustingly compatible. Just get over it.
It makes their relationship and the troubles that they have a lot more endearing because they're on that same wavelength where they're just not quite getting it. But also they're not so similar that it's like one of them just wants to date their clone. You know, there are enough points where, you know, Tomo just shows more awareness of things and June is just so far on the other end. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but it's weird because like I don't know, there's a kind of comforting regularity to it, I guess you could say, that I think is important for a lot of webcomics to have, because, you know, you want to be kept kind of coming back with that sense of familiarity. But at the same time, that means that there are a lot of moments that I think to just kind of like all kind of blended together for me. That if we had talked about this, you know, for example, like a day after I had read the whole thing, then I'd probably bring a lot more up. But I do give it a pretty strong recommendation. It's got for a 4-Coma series, it's got a pretty strong universal kind of sense of humor to it. So many young Coma that I've read have just that, you know, very weird, more slapsticky Japanese sense of humor to them, or a lot of puns, or that kind of thing. That, I mean, you can say like, oh, I guess it was okay, but I just don't really get it. But this one is like, yeah, like you said, I get the joke, and it's very appealing in that sense. This is just an independent webcomic. I think that Kodansha has published a few collected volumes the way that, you know, some successful long-running webcomics do. But hey, you know, some webcomics do really catch on, even in Japan. So it's possible that you might eventually see this actually get licensed.
I would actually really like to see that too, because one thing we didn't really note is, since this is like that kind of 4-Coma sort of thing, and your jokes are basically in this burst thing of here's a page. This is really like, you know, kind of what our version of like a Garfield or a Foxtrot or one of those things were. And I don't know about you, but I always preferred to read those in the like collected volume books, like of those that you could read, because that's when you could just binge through them and enjoy them. And if there was a narrative to it overarching in a Garfield story, I'm sure I would love to see that too. There's not really a lot of characters in Garfield to put like a real overarching narrative on. Maybe what was the Gap-Tooth one street cat's name? That's a question for another day, I suppose.
Gap-Tooth, the one that was his love interest?
Yeah.
Arlene?
Was it Arlene? Yeah, that does sound right. But yeah, that sort of thing. But
the cat that wore lipstick for some reason.
Why would she, Nick? Obviously. So
it's a girl cat. You gotta know that.
Yeah. How else am I gonna know it's a girl cat? How else am I gonna know it's female Slimer unless you put a little pink bow on her head?
I don't know. I always assumed that Nermal was female too, but I guess he wasn't. So.
You know, that's still a question I don't have an answer to. I think I've heard it different ways. I've stopped caring at this point. I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna let my past be my past.
We have to get off of Garfield's side characters, or else I'm going to start talking about the Garfield Pet Forest books that I had when I was a kid.
Oh, I almost want to hear about that. All right, so, but the notion being that those were more enjoyable things to read when you got the collected volumes of it. And I imagine the same's going to kind of apply to this, wherein you're going to, I think, enjoy reading Tomo-chan when you can read it as a whole, not as a whole, but at least in big concentrated bursts. Because reading it page to page, a lot of times there are pages that are kind of just setups to a longer premise, and those may not be worth it. So I don't know how the series kind of functions as a click here, I guess I wait 24 hours for the next one to come out kind of thing. I don't know how it functions in that way.
I think I'm going to end up keeping up with it, though. I did really enjoy reading this series, and yeah.
I could dig that. I enjoyed it absolutely as well. We have, I think, like an hour and a half to get through our rest of our recap, so we should probably
fortunately, we're without a couple of series this week, though, so we might be able to do it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do the recap portion, Weekly Manga Recap now. We're going to start things out with My Hero Academia. Color pages this week, including this big old 2-page spread of Deku and Red Riot posing together. But last time, we had Sun Eater, Kick-Ass, take names.
Which at first didn't make any sense to me. Like, when you read the chapter, it makes sense, but at first it was just like, I mean, this is a cool panel. Why Red Riot getting this over everyone else, though?
Oh, he's getting into a fight at the end. Okay.
Okay. I'm like, but Yuno's not even in the intro cover page.
Sun Eater kicked ass and defeated the 3 bullets, but he collapses in exhaustion at the end of this chapter after briefly seeing, hey, why is the foe so close to my face?
Oh, it's sneaking up on me again. Oh.
We then cut over to the group that Kirishima was buying. Sun Eater was buying time for. Get our chapter title. Shield and Shield, Spear and Shield. And oh, watch out, Chris. It's going to swap our attack and defense points.
Ooh. Or, in my mind, I just kept hearing the Shield theme song playing 3 times in a row. Yeah, like it starts like 3 consecutive versions, but then it breaks. And that, like, when a third one was
Sierra Hotel India, Sierra.
Then there's just one that's like, Spear. Like some dude nervously behind the counter. Spear! Oh, yeah, there you go. Goldberg comes out.
Or Edge, or Rhino,
Batista.
or Roman Reigns.
Wasn't that Batista? Did Batista do it?
Batista did use a spear as a signature move, yeah. Caitlyn, that was her finisher. She actually threw a really good spear. How many other fucking people threw spear? It's a really easy maneuver to execute, honestly.
It's a cool one, though. That's what's
good
what's
if you do it
about.
right. Yeah. Just gotta kick your legs out. Anyway, so Kirishima and Deku are expressing worry about leaving Sun Eater behind, but Fat Gum kind of shouts over them, like, "Hey, when a guy says he's got your back, a real man has just gotta believe." And Kirishima's like, "Yeah, he'll be fine." Easiest way to get him on your side. All right. We briefly see Mimic spying on things, sticking his head out of the wall, or just his eye, actually. And he sees, "Oh shit, Sun Eater actually beat them. That sucks." But at the same time as this is happening, Aizawa is giving an explanation on his theory about how Mimic's power works, which is that he has to focus his attention on certain areas. He doesn't become the area that he bonds with. He's actually kind of moving around through the walls and ceiling right now. And so he actually has to observe something in order to use his powers in order to affect it. Which is why they aren't currently being deterred, is because he kind of stayed and watched Sun Eater win. So I don't know why he didn't interfere in that, but okay.
I mean, until the last moment, it didn't seem like he was going to lose, or he didn't seem like he was going to win. So
I guess that's true. We catch up a little bit with the group that was left behind in order to deal with certain criminals, Bubble Girl and company. one of the members of the Yakuza, because some of the heroes are saying, "Hey, you should have just come quietly," or I think that's Bubble Girl actually saying this. "You should have just come quietly instead of rushing and trying to stop us. You guys are crazy." And the guy's like, "We're not crazy. Everyone you're arresting is perfectly sane. If we came quietly, Overhaul would end us." They're like, "What?" "Yeah, because he's Yakuza. He's the boss we respected. But, Overhaul, villain names, real villains. Yeah, he decided to take the gang in the direction of using superpowers after his old man lifted to him. And I'm not going to be the one. I'm pretty sure that the one who messed up the old boss so bad he can't talk no more was meh."
I mean, this is interesting because I think you'd be lying to say if you didn't have at least some idea, like, dude, Overhaul, like, cripples his old man to, like, get to this point. But we've seen somewhat of a reference paid to him. Like, we've kind of seen an aspect of that. So I'd be kind of curious to see just how far this dynamic goes. It's never felt fully as though Overhaul would be like somebody who was in his father's shadow and was just like, no, it's time for our new age of villains. Because he seemed to have a respect for the way of the Yakuza. And that's his like big thing about trying to take other heroes' quirks and things like that. So I'll be kind of curious to see when we get like a backstory, like what led to this essentially.
Mm-hmm. And what happened at the villain meeting?
Oh my God, tell me!
We catch back up with the hero group. Mimic goes after them again and tries to isolate and crush Aizawa with the wall. And so Mimic is thinking to himself while doing it, all right, I'm going to take these guys out one at a time, and I'll start with the guy who can actually stop me. But Fat Gum intervenes, shoves Aizawa out of the way, and is instead the one who gets thrown through the wall as a result. And Fat Gum's just kind of like, hey, okay, I'll take this. You've got to just erase this guy. So there you go. Fat Gum is sent hurtling through a tunnel that Mimic has made in order to isolate them from each other, I guess. And when he recovers, he gets up and realizes that Red Riot is there with him. He's like, huh? What? He's like, yeah, see, I dove into trying to protect Sensei because I knew that I would be fine, but I sank into you, so.
It's like that. It's like that great Family Guy joke where like Peter lifted his shirt up one time and there was like a footstick and he's like, what the hell is that? And it like pops out and Stewie rolls off on the ground like, oh, bovine lummox! Oh, like he's just been trapped in there for days.
Yeah, early Family Guy too, jeez. The two of them are attacked by the big brutal looking bullet, who's got freaking gauntlets on his fists and stuff. Kirishima goes unbreakable in order to absorb the blow and gets beaten the crap out of him. Fat Gum too gets hurt pretty bad, it seems.
There is immediately a moment here as I read this that I was like, oh my God, Kirishima really just feels Chad-like in this moment. Like he just a little bit ago, he got to show off his unbreakable thing and how cool it was. And then this chapter, he gets fucking broken.
Nope, here's an actually important foe.
Yeah. I'm like, oh no. But I don't think that's the case. But there was a moment here where I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he goes for his big, hardening technique. And Fat Gum manages to stand against the onslaught that this guy launches at them. He is clearly beaten up by it, but Red Riot is really in bad shape. He is been knocked into the wall, and then when he gets back up, his hardened skin is like flaking off of his arms. Ugh.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. This is something where, because I haven't watched any anime at all, but I imagine this is going to be one of those scenes that's going to be a lot more disturbing when you can actually see it animated. There's a little bit of like I can't tell what's necessarily blood or what's your like ripped off flesh in this scene sort of imagery to it. So a little bit of innocence preserved in that way, but it looks still brutal seeing like the shards of his hardened skin that are just clearly been shattered past.
I mean, well, even if you don't see like any blood, like imagine just him holding his arms up and like flakes of his skin falling off like that.
Yeah.
Fat Gum tries to retaliate against the guy, but this very zen-looking guy backs him up, and he introduces himself as, let's see, what the fuck is he saying? Well, he says the other guy's name is Rappa, and I don't know what the shield guy's name is, though. He projects mental barriers, basically, while the fist guy punches the crap out of them, and Fat Gum even is really starting to hurt, as he's like, oh, each of these impacts is like a bullet. And the shield guy that is opposing them says, we are a spear and shield up against two shields. And so, yeah. Also, he talks shit about Kirishima. He's like, especially since calling the boy a shield gives him too much credit.
I'll save this for the end, but I'm excited for kind of the implication that's being set up here.
Yeah, Kirishima starts to have his inferiority complex kicking again. He's thinking, I'm not strong enough yet. But Fat Gum, good teacher that he is, says, keep on standing. You haven't lost until they break your spirit. Taking down villains is all about how fast you can make them lose the will to fight. If you throw in the towel first, what then? Let's beat these pawns down and rejoin the group.
Who is... Because there's a panel where he's like, I thought I'd gotten strong, and we could see him hunched over. Who's the person in the panel beneath that hunched over? Is that... It's not him as well, because it's different hair.
Him? Well, maybe it's when he was younger and didn't have red hair? I don't know.
I thought he always had red hair, though. I'm trying to think who would it be, though, because it's obviously something he must be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So... That seems interesting.
Maybe it's Fat Gum.
I mean, it could be.
Maybe it's Fat Gum as a kid.
It could be. I'm wondering, though, if it's a younger Kirishima. It doesn't... I mean, it very well could be. I felt like he's been displayed as always having red hair, so I assume. I might just be very wrong. Oh, he had dark hair in the entrance exam? All right, then I guess there we go. The answer's given. It's been a while since I've read the entrance exam.
It's a long time. That was like chapter 4.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, good chapter.
I like this a lot, and the implication I kind of get out of this is, maybe we get something more out of Kirishima in this. That proves... it
wasn't just like a one chapter to shine kind of thing.
Yeah, and that this may be something that kind of even builds up what his powers are going to be more so, because they say, like, oh, it's two shields going up against a spear and a shield, and wouldn't it be apropos if one of those shields ends up also being able to be a spear as well in this kind of scenario, that there's a way to kind of turn him into a weapon in a way, or some way to weaponize his ability. I mean, they could also just do it that he's so strong you can almost, like, the best offense is a good defense kind of thing, but I'd be interested to see if they find some way to, like, turn him into somewhat of a more kind of offensively based guy, especially considering he's kind of already, like, not an aggressive character, but in the same way, like, Bakugo is very...
brawler,
yeah,
sure.
he's somebody who gets fired up in combat kind of thing. So I'd be kind of interested to see how they do that.
Okay.
All right, so we need to move on then, and that means it's time to jump into Fairy Tail chapter... it closed on me, you filthy whore of a website. Crunchyroll.
It's chapter
How dare you?
541, The Magic of Hope.
Yeah. All right. So, last time, Acnologia sucked all the Dragon Slayers into them, and he's like, we gonna do it here, bitches. And in the real world, the Flesh Acnologia, the real dragon, the whole Apocalypse Dragon, he's gonna rain destruction down. So,
They really wanted you to understand that point by explaining it about 5 times in one chapter.
Yeah, they're like, here's the second diagram to explain to you what's happening, because you may not have gotten it quite yet. So, the start of this is basically just a fight occurring between the 7 Dragon Slayers and Acnologia. And there's not really actually all that much to say. No one really does anything that shocking in here. Wendy's like, I boost all your stats because my powers are kind of arbitrary. The different Dragon Slayers go in and do shit. I don't even think Cobra actually does anything. Oh no, he goes in to make a punch and it doesn't work. And he just notes, I can't hear his heart. I can't hear it. And Acnologia is just like, bitches, I'm the Dragon King. Then we cut away, because we really don't need to deal with that the rest of this chapter, because everything really about this chapter is to deal with the notion of how do we stop actologia in the real world. And the answer, Nick,
I know. Motion sickness
plays into a long-running thing that we found out about Dragon Slayers that has never had an actual explanation for it, but that Dragon Slayers get motion sickness on any kind of vehicle. So the literal plan is to get a boat and get actologia on it so that he gets sick, and I guess sick in the real world will then translate to the spirit world, and they can, like, simultaneously defeat him. It's worth noting this is at least Lucy's plan, so props to her for being the one to come up with it.
Flabbergasted. Like, holy shit, Lucy's getting to do something.
I fully expected it to be like fucking Mira Jane or something like that. Someone who could put in there and just be like, we haven't gotten my fetish out there in the magazine for a little bit, so let's prop me out there. Let me strut out.
Here's something though.
Okay.
The way that this goes down is, Lucy thinks to herself for a minute. Levy's like, hey, what are you thinking about? And she goes, I have an idea. And then the next page is a bunch of people reacting. It's Levy staring at her, and Urza's staring at her, and Gray looks flabbergasted. And then an explosion goes off, and Acnologia appears in the distance. They're like, oh my god, Acnologia's here! And then Kana's like, Lucy, what's your plan? I was almost certain that everyone's reactions there were
we heard your plan.
In response to Lucy hearing her plan. Instead, it seems as though they're instead saying, Lucy knows what to do.
I guess maybe it's supposed to be that they heard the sound effect of Actologia coming by. Maybe you would have assumed you would preceded their reactions by some sound effect occurring, but the sound effect occurs afterwards. So yeah, there is definitely a weird transition there. But yeah, her plan is get it on a boat. He'll be sick, because that's just the comedy thing that they've always had Dragon Slayers do, and now it's going to be the coup de grace of the entire main antagonist of Fairy Tail, apparently. But that's not enough, because you can't just put him on a boat. He's the dragon god. He'll just fly away. So we know of one magic that can stop Actologia, because it was proven to us back on that island when Actologia came to destroy us. And that is the power of friendship, the fairy spear. And their plan is actually not crazy in that they're like, we'll get him on a boat and then trap him there so he can't get off. And we'll use the fairy spear essentially as kind of a trapping tool as opposed to something to protect us. But then they realize they're like, none of us know dragon or a fairy sphere. Like the first master did it, and none of us know how to do it. And she just died.
You came back from the Makarov, you came back from the dead. Do you know how to do it? Nope.
Are your clothes illusion?
Useless. If I can't get big and punch him, I'm not going to do nothing.
It's like, hold on, everybody. Have I tried getting really big and punching Actologia yet? They're like, I don't think that's going to work. Even when you get really big, you're still nothing to this. But oh, no. I have a trick up my sleeve. I can get really, really, really big and punch something. Do you have, long distance tools? Nope. Well, he can shoot a nuke out of his mouth multiple times.
How big do you get? 20 feet tall. I mean, he's a giant dragon, so.
If I push myself to the extreme, I could do 25. I'll die afterwards, but I can do it.
I'll turn to stone for a few days, so.
Look, I hate you, Makarov, so much. You're so worthless at everything you do.
I'll die if one of you doesn't teleport in and teleport me back to safety.
God, Fairy Tail's the worst at times. There's a cut over to a conversation Actologia has inside the Dragon Slayer's world, but there's really not much to kind of get out of this. I'm not mean to kind of gloss over Actologia's lines, because I've said before he's one of the few cool villains in Fairy Tail. But a lot of what he's been saying here has just kind of been the same thing over and over again. I am the best. You will all die. Destruction waits for you. There's nothing really new to kind of get out of him. I need Actologia to say something kind of different at this point. Or something with some context toward it, or some substance, being where I've come from, different things like that, We get cuts around to various different things that have been going on. I guess, essentially, members of Fairy Tail teleport over to where Lamia Scale, I think, is the guild that Leon's in. They teleport over there to get the boat, And it's sort of tough to tell what's going on because they keep teleporting to different areas where the different, like, united guilds are fighting. And at this point, I guess I just had the assumption that I was like, I thought everybody got together at this point, but I guess that's not true. There's still, like, the different fronts going on, even though
some of them have to go and, like, Gray and Juvia go in order to get a ship prepared. Some of them are going to lure Onnanoko to the proper location in order to put their plan to effect. And then a group of them just go into the library in order to try and find Fairy Sphere.
Yeah. And there's an element to it that I like, that it's like, hey, all these different factions are putting in the effort to, like, get this. And it will be satisfying if every character we've kind of met to Fairy Tail to this point who's end up becoming, like, friends with them plays some part in Onnanoko defeat. If it's like, hey, Minerva and the rest of Sabretooth and the remnants of the Eration Six essentially are the decoy. They managed to survive long enough to get him over there. And Leon and the rest of the Lemia Scale are able to get a ship and bring it to the scene at the right time for them to enact their plan. And Lucy and all of them do it. That I could see where there's, like, a satisfying conclusion element to all that. It's a little confusing because there's a shit ton of Fairy Tail characters that kind of all have to be built to this point. But I get it. Like, I could see where it'd be kind of cool to finally get that payoff for Fairy Tail building up this huge cast of friends as time's gone on. So, I actually don't have any issue with this chapter. I thought I've heard some people have had, like, really strong reactions to it. And I don't see where you'd really find a big problem with this. Because there's nothing actually, like, they actually have a logical plan to defeat. I think that's...
It's actually a pretty clever plan. We'll use this protective sphere as a trap. That's a clever use of it. It's an impenetrable sphere that he can't penetrate from the outside, and thus he can't penetrate from the inside either, so he'll be trapped in it.
And that's something that's been established in Fairy Tail too. They long since now know that is something that Onnanoko power could not break. So it would make sense. I guess the only thing that's weird is, like, the Dragon Slayer motion sickness thing is going to be like a final battle conclusive element to things, and it's still weirdly unexplained. But outside of that, I think this is actually a solid chapter. And again, I'm happy that Lucy is playing some part in the ending of this that isn't like, shit, I forgot to give Lucy something to do. Fuck it, she'll just rewrite the Book of Zareth, and it's like, but you have a character in Fairy Tail who specializes in that magic. Why wouldn't she do it? That's it, though. That's Fairy Tail.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on to Food War Shokugeki no Soma. Rindo!
It's all about Rindo.
Mm-hmm. This is the big introduction into Rindo's specialty. And I know a lot of people were really excited for that. I really was hoping that she would just have the crocodile just, like, sit there and chill out while she cooked. Nope! It's chapter 220, Rindo takes the stage. Begin with this full-page spread of Rindo just fucking carrying knives like they're fucking Wolverine claws between her fingers. It turns out the special ingredient that she has to use is not crocodile, it's red pepper. Okay. And yeah, we get to look at the three ingredients that they're going to use. Some and Mimasaka have to use tuna, and of course we already know that green tea is the one between Tsukasa and Kuga. So Rindo basically immediately springs into action. She grabs the crocodile or the alligator, sorry, I should say, and she holds it out and towards. He says, "Hey, if you don't get moving, this little guy is gonna gobble you up." And she holds it out, and his freaking mouth opens up towards him. Even if, like, you didn't know anything about this, like, this would just be an immediately memorable image to have just someone holding out a baby alligator towards you and goes, "Ah!" what was it? The freaking MC goes on about how it's like, oh, Rindo Senpai is a master of rare ingredients. And then Rindo accidentally drops the alligator and starts chasing after the MC.
I love the way this like transition goes where she's just like, you better get going there, Mimisaka, because if you, or Super, whatever you're the third seat guy's name is, because if you don't, this alligator's going to gobble you right. Whoops. Oh, shit. Look out.
Oh, man, these guys are fast.
They mentioned in this, not to like jump in, but they mentioned like there's 3 distinct kind of different sides to Rindu. And I'm really starting to identify that because there is the side of her that's like overtly intense and is like ready to battle. And then there's the side of her that is just so silly and like childish in a way and everything like that. Mm-hmm. That you're just like, I gotta love this character dynamic where she's just like, she's so intense the next moment. They're like, whoops, drop my live alligator.
I love the, because she, grabs it back up. She's like, stop it, bad boy. And the alligator's kind of going, so she, puts the alligator down, whips the knife out, and she says, okay, little gator, thanks for giving me your life. And just like a blood splatter on the next panel. People are like, holy shit. She butchered the hell out of that thing really fast. And she just whipping out different size knives, skinning it, cutting off different chunks of it. And, like in almost an instant, she skins the thing up. We get this introduction into what makes Rindo like who she is, and what she's basically done ever since she joined the council was she took advantage of the fact that you can just go travel around the world in order to conduct research, which is a surprising but very like interesting quality of this, is that they mention hey Azon uses the council for like connections and stuff, and Tsukasa uses it in order to make sure that his food is top quality. But Rindo seems to have taken kind of the most practical approach to it, which is just, I'm going to go fucking travel around in order to learn shit.
Yeah, I'm just going to travel around the world eating different foods.
Yeah. It matches the stuff that her character that we've seen so far, which she travels around to weird places and eats weird stuff. But they also explain the much more practical aspect of this, which is she familiarizes herself with all sorts of weird tastes so that she can then, find the best ones and learn how to prepare them. There you go. We also get this brief diversion into, when she was going around during the Moon Festival, went into the wonderful world of insect gourmet. And she's like this returning customer there. And so they're like, oh yeah, a couple years ago, you had like ants this year we have crickets for you, so please enjoy. And it's kind of weird because we like see the food sitting on the dish in front of her, but when it comes time for her to actually eat it, it's censored.
Yeah, it's mosaicked out essentially.
It's a little odd.
Something that's kind of interesting about that, or about all this that we kind of discover, is she's not actually that far off from what Soma's father's specialty is, where his kind of sort of thing is the idea that he travels the whole world to find different cuisines and builds that into his repertoire. Hers is a little bit more kind of specified in that it seems that she looks out specifically like weird, rare ingredients and builds it off. Mm-hmm. But that is a part of what they say has kind of made Soma's dad the chef he is the fact that he traveled the world and has experienced all these different cultures. So I think that's a kind of cool aspect about Rindo that kind of builds her up to be this caliber number 2 character.
And then we get, the introduction to her. Rindo Kabuyashi has 3 distinct faces. Rindo the Epicurean, who uses her great wealth and power to satisfy her tastes. Rindo the field researcher, who systematically studies unknown ingredients in their native habitats. And Rindo the Barbarian, who gleefully hunts down any ingredient she can catch.
And doesn't wear clothes.
Jesus Christ, she's just wearing a bikini and fur. She looks as though she would be a video game character, honestly.
If this was the next League of Legends character, I would not be shocked if they were like, Rindo the Barbarian.
She swings around boar corpses as her special move.
Yeah, it's her ultimate. She throws boar corpses at you. She drops her alligator on the ground, which chases you around, biting your feet.
And someone gets really psyched up the more he learns about this, because eventually he's like, oh man, one day I want to get together with her and Sanosuke so we can talk about crazy ingredients. And there's like this imagined scene of them together like they're a fucking cult.
I do like the notion that that's what they're going to bond over. They're just gonna be like, I can't wait. We're all gonna talk about such weird, awesome ingredients, how delicious they are. And it's like, and
like,
I'm like, isn't one of the three of you like the one cook who's like, I just make gross shit, period. Like, I don't know if it's even good. I just make gross shit.
And also we get a brief moment to look at what Megashima is preparing, because he's going to be doing, he's got some char siu pork that he's whipping out. And so Yoshino is like, yeah, we shouldn't be so worried about Rindo because we've got Ramen Master Megashima Senpai on our side. Ramen Master. And this is where we're introduced to, give him a proper introduction to Megashima as he gets this big 2-page spread of him preparing a bunch of different cooking tools, rippling with muscles all the fuck over. And he's like, who's afraid of you?
I would believe at this point a new voice has to be applied to Megashima. He's Vin Diesel.
Who's afraid?
He's like, afraid. Who's afraid?
That's Sylvester Stallone, and you know it.
He's not that far from it, though. I need you to do it, though, because you got the deeper voice. That's the key to it.
No, yeah. Vin Diesel is actually really tough to do because he just kind of like talks normally, honestly. I mean, I could do kind of an Iron Giant, but that's not quite the same.
That's Vin Diesel. Do it then.
Who afraid?
He's like an
Rock.
Idiot. He's an idiot now.
That's what the Iron Giant was.
I didn't watch it.
Oh,
Nick, I haven't seen the Iron Giant. I have seen White Chicks though. Are these two comparable?
No.
All right. Well, they're comparable in my mind, so I'm okay with that.
Vin Diesel's not in White Chicks.
But Terry Crews is. So Terry Crews is better than Vin Diesel.
Not. I mean, I'm not going to argue that point. Terry Crews is pretty amazing. But apples and oranges.
Yeah. You know what? Ultimately, with this chapter, Rindo came out looking awesome. She's, incredibly cool. We're getting to see these different dynamics and things like that. These different shades to her. Megashima, at the other end, came off looking a lot more disposable at the end, when it's just it's like, and don't forget Megashima, Ramen Master. The next chapter, I expect to see him fucking on the ground, like in a fucking orgasm, like the ninth seat that got just like thrown aside. Because it's like Ramen Master seems like kind of a cool specialty, I guess. But just like the fact that it was kind of revealed to us as like this thing at the end of the chapter, like, hi, I make ramen. It's just like after after 17 plus pages or so, like being used to just describe how awesome Rindo is. It's just like, hey guys, don't forget about me. Family.
This chapter opens up. He's on the with family.
Ramen and me, with family.
Keep doing Sylvester Stallone.
It's not Sylvester. Sylvester Stallone is like, hey, it's over here, but this, it's just like family, it's different.
I can see that, I guess, a little bit. Anyway, yeah. I would not be too surprised if we opened up the next chapter. Megashima was on the ground, wide-eyed, with a ramen brick stuffed into his mouth. Anyway. All right, let's get into our batch of new series then. We will kick things off with Cross Account, the social media kind of themed love triangle,
the social
romantic
media
comedy.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, Fake X Reel. So last time we were introduced into to Daichi, aka Mr. Harmless, aka Mr. Harmful. He ended up saving his childhood friend, Mao, from really, really, really weird computer nerd rape. It was very uncomfortable. And this chapter is more about introducing the third in that triangle, which is Onnanoko, the idol that we saw at the end of the last chapter, who is also known as Shithead. Sorry, Poophead. The online friend of Daichi when they use their aliases to communicate with each other. We do get a little bit of Daichi at the beginning. We reestablish the whole, oh, girls aren't scared of him. He's Mr. Harmless. He writes this really weird thing because some girls, like, some wind blows up some girls' skirts as he's running by them. They're like, oh no, boys are, oh, it's just Mr. Harmless. Okay, it doesn't matter if he sees her underwear. And so he writes down, like, mark my words, you stupid girls who treat me like a bug. Every single man in the world is essentially a predator in his head. What the fuck's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, you know.
And then he's like, but, oh, thanks for the great view. He's like,
I don't know.
I know that there's the joke like that they don't see him as a threat and stuff. I get it, but it's like, I'm actually a pervert. Okay. Is that supposed to make you endearing? It doesn't.
I mentioned last time that I felt the series kind of was in this weird place where it was bringing up social media, but not, and like address the fact that there's a dark side to it. Like, that could be utilized, but wasn't, and that's kind of a weird place. After that, I kind of like started, I was like, I guess I didn't maybe get my thought across correctly on that, and I didn't necessarily think the series was bad, but I just feel as though it's playing in an area that has a lot of potential for this sort of series, and I feel as though it's something that, no matter what direction it goes, it could miss out on telling something more interesting if it just goes like a standard, like, romance story. But this is a chapter where we don't get a lot of Daichi, but in his short time, he manages to make himself a little more despicable in the same way, because now we're starting to get the impression that he does have, like, aggressive things. Like I mentioned last time, he shitposts his schoolmates, and he's still not directly insinuating, like, oh, fuck Nancy from 2A because she thinks I don't matter. Like, he's not doing that, but it's still this thing where he puts his aggression out online through social media, and it's attracted a following through that. And that is something that has an inherent kind of dangerous quality to it, or at least something that's not a positive quality. Because again, he's seemingly getting rewarded for all of this. So,
and if he's growing in popularity through all of this, you have to think that eventually he might, like, inspire someone to do the wrong thing with that following of his, if he keeps on posting that kind of thing out there.
There's a large discussion that's currently ongoing as, like, the new media social advent kind of rises, where it's like, how responsible are you for your fan base if you put ideas out there and someone who follows you decides to enact upon that? And again, it's one of those things where I'm like, this is a much larger, like, sort of premise than this series is going to deal with. This series is ultimately just about, like, hey, I used the social media account to hook up with this hot otaku chick who pretends she's not actually an otaku. And it's just like, you keep putting these things out there that have real life kind of things to them, like consequences and elements, and you're just not going to deal with them. And it's frustrating. I don't necessarily blame it on the author, because maybe it just doesn't have that kind of social context over there the same way it does here or something like that. But it's just one of those things where it's just like, the elements you're putting in have a reality to them, and they're just not being addressed at all. It's all just a vehicle for what seems like a pretty generic romance story.
By the way, he's not going to hook up with the idol. He's going to hook up with Mao anyway.
Almost certainly.
First girl. Which is what this is what the entire thing with Daichi is actually about. It's to introduce how most girls don't care if he sees their panties because he's Mr. Harmless, but then he happens to see Mao's panties when her skirt blows up too, because the skirts at the school are approximately 8 inches long. So he's just like, whatever, she'll just treat me the same way all the other girls do. And she threatens to beat him up instead. And he's like, oh, what's wrong with you? Come on. Like, you're not the kind of person who seems to care about that anyway. And so she beats him on the head. It's like, what the fuck do you think about me? Yeah, of course, being that, since he saved her, she started to see him differently. She sees him as more of a man now, and so she actually is prone to getting embarrassed. Kind of like the whole thing with the much better series we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
The rest of the chapter from this point, though, is introducing us to Onnanoko, the idol, including some very, honestly, kind of discomforting bikini shots of her. Like, I was just like, I'm just gonna, like, looking at softcore porn at this point, honestly.
There is an immense amount of just, like, cheesecake in this chapter, And this is, of course, one of the chapters I read while I was at school. Like, I have, like, a math class that's a lab. So like, you bring your laptop.
You just have to explain why the 15-year-old Japanese girl's ass is in your face.
That's where, like, I've turned the laptop and I very quickly, like, click, 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 click. Please get to, like, just, like, when's Dr. Stone come up?
Oh, thank God she's wearing a tracksuit after that page.
Oh, phew. All right.
The big reveal is that when she's in her private life, she's not on the red carpet. She's not doing really, really slutty bikini shoots. She's just this girl who slobs around at home, sits in a beanbag chair, wears a hoodie and sweatpants and glasses, and just falls asleep while surrounded by her tech and snacks on really unhealthy foods and stuff.
She's Diva from Overwatch. There's like a character in a robot who the fans have made a joke that she's essentially just some video game gremlin who eats Doritos and Mountain Dew and plays games all day.
But, you do you. They introduced this joke, which the first one is I thought was okay, because her mother manager,
her momager
comes in and is like, you had this bag of potato chips, that's freaking 1,200 calories. She's like, stop snacking on junk food. And she's like, no, it's okay. I had 2 bags of potato chips, and that's 1,200 calories. I had 500 milliliters of Coke, that's 50 calories. So that's 1,250 calories. So if you give me 4 hours at the gym, I'll get back in shape. And she's like, you don't have that time in your schedule, though. Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's kind of funny. But then it introduces she's got this freaking life-size figure from a popular video game series. And so her mom's like, how much did you spend on that? Oh, 1,920,000 yen. Which, for those of you who don't know, that basically means she spent like $20,000 on this thing. $20,000. So fuck her.
Well, I mean, look, she's what, a teen idol? Like, I guess it's like, it's her money at some point. You're
not allowed to complain about how you can't be your true self if you get to spend $20,000.
Oh yeah, that's a different scenario, different bag of peanuts. But
also she then whips out like, it's okay, we've still got like 75 million yen in savings. It's like, if you do the math, which is very, very quickly, it's like you spent 1/20th of your savings on this thing. Or not 20th, 40th of your savings on this thing. That's entirely too much.
Yeah, especially if it's just like, wait, that's all you've made out of, like, you're supposed to be the biggest, like, actress of this era right now, right? Like, of time in Japan and everything like that. I'm surprised that's all you've made. Or, I guess I'm trying to, like, rationalize how much she's made in comparison to how that fucking doofy looking statue has cost her that much of her total worth of time. I don't get it.
Yeah, so it's like, her mom's like, you should not ruin your precious talent. Know that you were born to be an actress. And so she's like, I'm sad. I'm gonna go be glum while naked in the tub.
Yeah, there was a point where it's like, it closes in on her, like, clothing basket, which they emphasized by having her bra, like, hanging over it. At first, I was like, what's happening? Like, because I didn't realize, like, a transition was in effect. I was like, oh, God, she's not doing, like, a bikini photo shoot again, is she? Is this all this chapter's going to be?
She's going to act in a movie that requires her to wear a bikini during the entire thing. She's bend over at weird points.
Oh, no, she's in Transformers 7!
Michael Bay's going to make her wash his car.
I just heard about that the other day. That's so fucked up. It's like, hey, for this audition, can you wash my car and I'll videotape it? Oh, the tape went, so I don't know where it went. It's gone now. It's all gone. It disappeared. But you got the job.
So we get a little bit of a scene of where she discovered the Mr. Harmful account. And then she was like, oh, I can't keep up this pure and innocent act anymore. No, how long will I have to do this? How long must I continue hiding my true self? I'll be alone forever. But then she's like, oh no, because there's Mr. Harmful and he's like me. He also has worries about being a phony. So he hides his true self and also feels isolated. So that we can share that together and connect. I'll call myself Poophead in order to communicate with him.
Sure.
And, there's been a bunch of, he makes her happy somehow. Whatever. They get along, they interact online. Only when I'm talking with you do I not feel alone. I can become who I really am, which is understandable. You know, I have this person that I can be genuine with. I don't have to put on a facade with them. Honestly, it's a lot more endearing than what just Daichi does, because like, I'll be my true self in front of a bunch of anonymous followers, as opposed to this person she feels like she has an actual one-on-one personal connection with. Anyway, the whole thing ends with a bit of a conversation with them, and Daichi says that he managed to win a ticket so that he gets to shake hands with the Onnanoko. And so she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to meet him in person. Oh no!"
Oh, wow. I'm dumb. I totally misread that as he got 2 tickets, and her lie would have to be found out, because she couldn't be in 2 places at once if he was going to go along with him to see it. But it's like, oh no, she's just going to have to meet him. That's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know. I'd just be like, hey, does she even know what he looks like? Because he hides his identity.
No, so, she doesn't.
Yeah, all right. You know what?
Presumably the meetup is going to be about her trying to determine which of them is, like, Mr. Harmful. You know?
We've gotten 2 chapters of this now, and we'll get one more, because that's how the jump starts work. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're seeing, like, Shudan has come and done its run. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm trying to be kind of a little more open-minded with this series, because I kind of had muddled thoughts on it last week. And I feel as though this series, I don't enjoy it very much. You know, these sort of very cheesecakey love stories are just not my cup of tea. You know, they're kind of aimed at a different audience than I am anyway. It's aimed at people younger than me, you know, where the cheesecake is really that appealing kind of aspect to it. But I still I'm kind of waiting for that thing that is supposed to be, I guess, make the hook to it.
Yeah.
That I just can't get into yet. Like, I just haven't been able to find much to really invest in. I like the art in this series. I think that they draw, like, the artist has really good expressions. Like, I kind of like her expression at the end as, like, you know, a level of adorableness to it, that she's so shocked that somehow, like, the left side of her glasses is unhooked and, like, falling down. Like, she's just like, like, it descended, essentially. Like, I do like some of those aspects to it, but I'm just not able to, like, fully immerse myself in this series.
It does. I do get what you mean. It sort of feels as though you haven't hit that point where, you know, someone points to it and it's like, this is why you got to read this. It feels like somehow we haven't actually gotten that, when I'm pretty sure it's come and gone.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Stone. We're going to do Z = 16 Kohaku. Last time Senku and Taiju went their separate ways. Senku is going to attempt to find someone that he can make an alliance with, the mysterious group that sent up those smoke signals. And so he sets off on his own, carrying the flag with him that he made last time. But he also thinks to himself, oh, but hey, if Tsukasa meets up with that person, then that could be a big problem. We cut over to where Tsukasa and that person come across each other. And we actually get our first good look at the girl that we saw a few weeks ago, with the high-heeled sandals and all that. And Tsukasa is making observations about her as she approaches, because she's a young girl, and he's like, oh, she's got blue eyes, so maybe she's like only part Japanese and stuff. And as she approaches him, she's holding out this big bundle of flowers towards him, which she then immediately reveals as hiding a knife when she tries to attack him. And it's this great, like, sequence of multiple different badass things, because first off, it starts off with Tsukasa as she's approaching me, like, 57 meters behind me, to the right. I can sense your presence. And then she comes up to him and attacks him with a knife, and he's just barely even moving as he uses his spear sword thing to block it.
It's sort of crazy, because we now know that, you know, I shouldn't say now know, but this is a series that's drawn by the same guy who gave us Sunken Rock. Mm-hmm. So it's somebody who's been used to doing a battle action series. And it's sort of funny seeing this happen, because first and foremost, it's still like we're thinking, like, why is she wearing such weird sandals? Because there's a particular, like, emphasis on the fact she, like, lands on one foot and, like, twist pivots on it. And I'm just like, I feel like the heel would make that so much more difficult. But then there's a shot that defies all logic. I can't explain it. She's, like, spinning around butterfly knifing and for some reason, like, her leg is up and, like, shooting behind her head. I can't explain.
One of those, like, gymnasts or contortionists where they sit on their own head, basically. Yeah.
It's something where I'm just like, the art for this, it seems cool, but I have no idea what she's doing at this point. She is, like...
She's backflipping while moving forward. So, because her legs are kicking up at him as she's turning that way.
It is a very unique sight. But I do like that this chick eventually just showed up and is just like already trying to like Black Widow this dude like down, just like, I'm gonna do flippy, kicky, choky nonsense to you.
And she immediately explains why she's attacking him this way, because she's like, I saw everything. You took that girl hostage, and then when the gentleman gave himself up to save her, you slew him without mercy. And we get this little statistic box that pops up. Eyesight, 20/1.8. Which is freaking impossible, basically. That essentially, I think that means that she has better eyesight than like most birds of prey do. So,
which would make sense for the sort of absurd world that's created by everyone. I guess there's always that thing when, like, an eye shield, like, characters just kept getting abilities where you're just like, this guy could throw a football in under a tenth of a second. You're just like, it's impossible. But in this, it's just like, fuck it. This is like a more fantasy world. You don't have to apply to the logic of football so much. So, like, sure, why doesn't she have, like, eyesight better than a hawk?
And so, yeah, she said, like, you know, you killed the gentleman sorcerer, so I will kill you. I know you're an evil person. She specifically refers to Senku as the gentleman sorcerer, and so Tsukasa is like, wait, what are you talking about? And she uses a bunch of terminology like, you have already forgotten being bathed in his magic. That strange black powder, it called forth the mountain's rage. Fuck is she talking about? Wait a minute. And he realizes, you're not someone who actually woke up from petrification. Maybe you're the child of someone who was. Or, no, just how many generations removed are you? And we do get this brief glimpse into her memories. It shows that when she was a kid with presumably a brother and a mother with her. But it's an interesting idea that we hadn't really brought up before, you know, because we thought of this, there could be people who have, also been revived, of course, and we saw the hints of that. But also, yeah, they were thousands of years petrified. So if someone was released from it before them, it wouldn't necessarily have been within a few months the way that Taiju and Senku were.
There's a lot of room within this mystery to play like side stories or things like that and incorporate them in like other people who broke out and what they did. So I do like this little thing in here of like, hey, this new character isn't one of the kids from Taiju when they're at high school.
So Tsukasa quickly analyzes what to do next, and he concludes, hey, well, if there's all these primitive people, then that means that they are unburned by science. And so I could subjugate them at any point I want to. I could kill them at any point I want to, but I better leave that for later because I've got more important things to do. I've got to go secure the revival fluid. So he knocks the girl away and cuts through a tree, as you do, and
with a spear, by the way.
A stone-bladed spear just immediately throws on top of her. The ruckus attracts Senku's attention, and he comes across the aftermath of the battle where the tree has collapsed on the woman, and she's like, oh, you are the gentleman sorcerer who protected the girl. You are alive. And so Senku looks at everything, and he's like, okay, look, I've got a couple of ideas here. So if you're about to die, then I might be able to blast you out of here with what little gunpowder I have left. But if you give me some time, you might die from waiting for so long. But if you can make it, then I will definitely save you. You got two choices, so you've got to give me your answer quickly, though. And so she stares at him and kind of shocked for a second, and then she says, I can make it. And so Senku goes about doing what he does, which is science. And it's, just a pretty simple solution, honestly, which is he makes a block and tackle system. He makes a set of pulleys and ropes, over the course of, several hours, presumably. And he hooks a bunch of stuff up and then goes up to the top of a tree, hooks the rope around a branch, and uses that to, just fall down and with the poison ropes. He's like, hey, this is something that was learned about by Archimedes thousands of years ago. And with this, a high school nerd like me can wield strength on par with monsters like Tsukasa or Taiju, the pulley. And it works. He lifts the tree off of her. And so she says, as she's being freed, oh, it's amazing, not your knowledge of that Arca something, fellow, but how you kept hammering away at the problem one step at a time. Your unwavering conviction. My name is Kohaku, and I believe I've fallen for you quite hard. And I do really like Senku's expression at this. Like, he doesn't really know what to think about what she just said.
He's like, you're not a science equation. I don't know what to do with you.
The way that she's fucking drawn, because of course she's on her back after having been pinned down, and she's revealed, and she's wearing what essentially amounts to, like, just freaking...
like a cocktail dress.
A nightgown. Almost like a nightgown kind of thing. And, so she's looking at him like, and he's going to like, huh? What's going on here? What language are you speaking? Is it French?
I like this chapter. I like what we've kind of had established about this character. It's cool to have like a fighting female character in this sort of series. So it's interesting to kind of have that be her element. I guess we're kind of still going to have to wait for what will be the consequence to all these things. We still don't know everything about her. And I think he mentioned like looking for other people, like other people set up smoke signals. So, this won't be the only one, but I do like how this is kind of started off, and it'll be good to see kind of how I guess these two characters can play off of one another. We didn't get a lot of interaction between them here, but we got enough to kind of get a sense that it's like, oh, hey, this will be kind of cool.
And it's an interesting, she's got this kind of interesting aspect to her because she is like this, primitive character, but you can tell that she was, raised by, or at least generations that came down from modern people. And Tsukasa definitely seems to be onto something, which is that seems to be a few generations removed from the person who was freed, because, if she's the daughter of, like a Japanese high schooler, she's not going to throw around words like the gentleman sorcerer or something like that, the mountain's fury or whatever. But at the same time, she's not portrayed as being, I guess,
it's like she's like, you smart man, make fire to save me with, or something like that. Like she has sort of a native eloquence to her in a way, or something like that, like a simple eloquence.
It's almost like she's more out of medieval times than out of the Stone Age, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also greatly appreciate her incredible bluntness. I think that's fun. Okay, let's move on to Shudan, which is the third and final chapter of the Jumpstart run for that series. And so, by now we've had time for Soshi and Akira to get to know each other and actually become friends. But Soshi is still being stupid preteen boy about it. It's like, no, cooties, girls, meh. As this chapter deals with the start of the new school year, as I think that they're in their last year of primary school, I want to say. And so she discovers that he and Akira are now also going to the same school in addition to being at the club. And there's a very awkward moment between them because Akira spots him in the hallway and he's just kind of like,
yeah, peace.
And they're in freaking classes right next to each other, so it's not like you can just avoid her forever. I love that he immediately is like, I probably shouldn't have done this.
I know that feeling of immediate social regret where you're just like, should have done that. I've already done it, and all I could do is sit here and dwell in it, marinate in my own awkwardness.
And we get a time skip after that. Hamanichi has a practice match, or not a practice match. It's their first official game of the year. And so they're going to be taking on, according to their coach, their arch rival, Tenryu. And immediately the kids are like, they're our arch rival, I guess. The chapter is basically built around, Akira is a lot better than the kids on the other team are expecting because she's a girl, But in the second half, they start treating her really seriously because they realize now how good she is, and they aren't afraid of roughing her up if they need to. And meanwhile, Soshi is clearly bothered by stuff that's going on. He's not playing as well as he usually does. But by the end of things, he gets his act together because he sees the way that Akira is staying optimistic during the match. Because even though she's being roughed up, she's like, that just means that they view me as a threat. So, let's do this. And so she gets his act together and is like, hey, Akira can do this. And so if she can have that kind of reaction, then hey, I should be freaking put down by the fact that, she's a girl and I was talking to a girl. I suck at dealing with girls, and she is a girl. Very smart observation there.
Yeah.
But he calls out to her to pass the ball to him. She kicks it down. They manage to get a drive going. And so she scores a goal. And while he's thinking to himself, hey, you play soccer, so you're one of us. And we do get reconciliation between them because he goes over to her, reaches his hand out to help her up, and he's like, hey, I'm sorry for blowing you off the other day. Akira lets out a breath, takes his hand, and punches him in the gut. I really like this, honestly. This very straightforward interaction that they have, and the fact that she's just like, yeah, okay. The twist on expectations where you just kind of like think like, yeah, it's okay, no. She toughs it out and makes him pay for it, but they get better, so. And, they end up winning the game at the end. I really like this chapter, honestly. I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it's just like, I really like it. Okay.
I am okay with the notion that we won't get any more Shudan. I like the series. I think it is like a very fun, well-written series that has very likable characters. But my, not issue with it, because I don't want to say this as though it's like a problem, but the thing that keeps me from getting into the series is there's no like long-term sort of thing to work to. Everything's like, if this was the last chapter of Shudan, I'd be like, well, this makes perfect sense. There's nothing left to do. Because there's not like any conflict really right now. It's not like they're like, we need to get to a Christmas bowl, or the team just won't accept her because she's a girl, or even other teams won't accept. Like, everything has been handled. The other team eventually like got to respect her and things like that. Like, I just don't know where, I guess the thing is like, what's going to happen between her and, the male lead. I guess that's like the hook to be like, what happens next week? But as it is right now, I'm just like, there's nothing for me that says like, what happens next week or anything like that. It's just, this is every week comes in and you read something and you leave happy, and then you go home, and then maybe the next week you're like, oh yeah, I guess I should read Shudan because maybe something is developing in there. I'm not saying this is an issue, and I can see why a lot of people really like this series. And again, I like this series too. I think it's well written. I just, as something in Jump that's meant to kind of like hook people into it and its premise, I just don't think the series has anything like that yet, because it hasn't built anything there to see the long-term payoff for it. Like, I just, like, there's even the rival has been conquered by them at this point. Like, I just don't know what the series' main goal is.
I guess I gotta get your point. If we think about some of the stuff that we saw before this, going back several months, you've got We Never Learn. We set up the fact that it's like, okay, Yuiga's got to get these different people in order to actually, he's got to accomplish this seemingly impossible task of getting them to learn a specialty that they're not strong in. U19 is about the conflict between kids and adults, and the red thread of fate kind of thing. Paro was about him trying to make his way in the demon world while people keep on attacking him. Mary was about this weird thing with our main guy being cursed in order to have Mary, and what's going to result from that. That's the intrigue there. Dr. Stone, they're in this stone world. Robot Laser Beam is a much more straightforward, this guy discovers a sport, and so he's getting into it. You have to remember, I think, that, Yokota and other mangas seem to really follow that kind of approach to things. If you think about, Straighten Up and Kurosawa, neither of them really had a particular, this is the thing, this is the ultimate goal that we're going for from this. I do understand what you're talking about, though, in terms of like a Shonen Jump series. It feels like it kind of needs to have this is what we're kind of going towards sort of thing. But at the same time, the stuff that we've gotten, I've liked. So I see the point of nothing really makes me want more. So.
Yeah, I think it's not that it necessarily has to have a Christmas bowl, but it's at the point right now where I feel like everything's kind of already been addressed. The only thing to do is, I guess, dig more into the fact that he has sort of like a tough, to basically explain it, in cross manage. It was a big thing that the main lead girl, I'm really far removed from that series. I don't remember the characters' names off the top of my head. She had this wild pass, and she couldn't control it, and she had her teammate who was stupidly strong. Sorry, she was the one who had the wild pass, because she was stupidly strong, but she couldn't aim her pass all the way correctly. And, the other girl who was super energetic wanted to be able to do it, but she needed that play to work. And that's something that they kind of had to build to, and they got to at the end of the series, they connected that pass finally. Here, it's like, we've been established that Akira has this ability to communicate with Soshi in a way that she respects his speed enough to create a perfect pass for him. And they do it, and they connect, and they score a goal. And it's like, all right, so the third chapter's happened, and that's just been handled. They got teamwork on fucking lockdown already. And I'm just like, I just don't know what you do to build upon this that isn't just going to make this Yatsusoba or whatever, where it's just like you come to this to just enjoy life for 19 pages and then go on with your life.
Okay.
All right, let's jump into We Never Learned, question 19. A genius and X take the weather for granted. So this is actually kind of interesting to me because you mentioned it last week, and we're seeing it really come into effect here. Furuhashi seems to have abandoned the game for Yuega's heart, or at least maybe never has fully immersed herself in it. I
don't think she was ever playing for it, Chris.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we've gotten to this point now where it feels like she's the third girl who came in at some point later on, as opposed to Takamoto, because it's now all basically about Takamoto and Ogata, who have kind of recognized they have feelings for Yuega, but can't kind of come to grips with them or anything like that. They still think that he kind of likes somebody else. So that's kind of a big portion of it. Furuhashi explains to Yuega, like, hey, they're girls. They have this psychology. You have to read their emotions and kind of take that into consideration about things. And Yuega's just like, yes, girls, I get it. I can do this. And you're like, no, you can't. You're a fucking loser. You're not going to get this.
Him and Jun need to get together.
Yeah. They make the perfect comparison to one another. Every time Yuega tries to explain something, Jun's like, let's go punch rocks together. And he's like, I don't want to punch rocks.
Is there a way you can do that by studying?
Can I study the rocks away?
And then Uruka and Rizu and Tomo come around in bikinis, and they're just kind of like, oh, where do I look? I don't, what's going on?
So Takamoto shows up, and she has her blouse unbuttoned an extra button, and she's got her skirt hiked up a little bit higher, and it's all at the request of her two friends who are basically like, girl, go for it. And they sort of...
I'm noticing something, by the way, about Uruka recently. It seems as though there is, a real... Because you noted about how it's pulling out the wedgie thing. It just it's every single time she wears a swimsuit, she gets a wedgie. It's just a constant thing.
Yeah.
does this girl's swimsuit not fit her properly? Does she need a new one? Like,
I mean, I guess maybe that's just the way it works. I don't know. I haven't worn a lot of one-piece swimsuits in that way, so I don't know how the physics on it works.
maybe she just swims so fast it just goes. I don't know.
The buttocks muscles are constantly in flux, and thus, as that, it. What was the line Christy Hemme said when she ate that pie with her butt, and she was like, "My panties are hungry," or no, my butt's so hungry from munching on these panties. The Diva Search was a very weird time for the WWE, Nick. A woman ate a pie with her butt.
Didn't she also call someone a cum-guzzling gutter slut at some point?
I wouldn't be shocked. So yes, probably. Anyways, so she shows up and basically is like, hey, can I walk home with you? And there's a tension there because she's doing this to be, like, hey, I'm going to be more overt and try to push out there that I want this. But because of Furahashi's recommendation, Yuega's like, oh, I should keep my distance because I don't want to send any mixed signals to her or anything like that. So basically, like, she tries to get close to him, then he just shifts the other way, and they just keep doing it to the point where, like, people are walking down the street and see them passing by, like, just, I guess, constantly, like, getting closer and then moving away from each other, like they're dancing down the street or something.
It's like they're kind of speed walking together almost.
Yeah, and they end up winding up at the shrine. They got lost. And they look at it, and it's a shrine dedicated to success in academic scholarship and the fruition of romantic love. And of course, Yuega's like,
just got to cover all the young people worries, basically.
Yeah, and Yuega's like, academic scholarship, and of course, Takuma is like, romantic love. So they go up there to do their prayers, and Yuega just comments how she's praying really hard, so she must really want to get better at studying, more or less. Takamoto, it starts to rain, so they have to stay there. Takamoto kind of like lays down. She's like, I was kind of praying to make my crush's heart race, and I forgot about everything else. And she kind of like lays there defensively for a little bit. And Yuega's like, oh, I can't look at her. That would be improper. You know, she has a crush and everything like that. So, oh man. And she's just there thinking like, damn it, your plan's not working. I'm pretending to be like defenseless and, you know, sensual, and he's not doing anything. And then she starts feeling like tongues licking her, and she's like, oh, Yuega, this is too much too soon. And she like opens her eyes, and it's just a bunch of cats that are licking the shit out of her.
What a weird joke.
I think what's funny to me is the cats have these really like cartoonish faces, and like they're saying things almost like, feed us, we're hungry. It's like, wait, was she just being licked by feral cats and Yuega didn't do anything to stop it?
Well, I guess because he's not looking at her, I guess is the thing. But also realize that there are 3 cats swarming over her. And so her imagination, because she was closing her eyes and pretending to be asleep, led her to believe that there were 3 Yuigas licking her in different places.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. In her fucking hormone-driven mind, I'm sure she's like, of course there's 3 Yuegas looking me all over. That's how sensual this is.
That's what a god in bed this guy must be.
Yeah. So they're heading down the path later, and Yuega's of course all tired because he's a boy who doesn't get much exercise. And Takamoto's just like, I failed, this didn't work. But Yuega's like, so hey, can you button up? 'Cause your boobs are out and I can see them. And she notes that his heart is racing. And he says, like, hey, you know, it's nothing. It's just like, you should save that kind of thing for the guy you like. And she's like, yeah, okay. And she goes home happy with the notion of like, hey, this worked out. I can tell he does see me as like a woman. He does see me as somebody he could like. He was, you know, his heart was racing at that. So she has some confidence. And she goes back to class, and her friends are just like, we should hike your skirt up another 3 centimeters. It's like, what? That shit was barely like covered anything as it was. But her score did go up as a result. Damn. That was ominous.
Lighting capital of the world.
I wish I'd had a more like epic line that happened over.
But she's happy.
Oh. Yeah. She's happy though, and her score went up as a result.
It's still going.
If Gullah Gullah Island taught me anything, Nick, you had to wait for the flash to go, then start counting. And that lets you know how far away the thunder is. Gullah Gullah Island taught me many lessons.
So yeah, it seemed as though there is going to be some resolution over this whole fallout of them finding out that Yuiga has a girlfriend / kissed a girl / all this other stuff. So I would assume that next week we're probably going to get the Ogata part of that.
That would make sense.
But this is a really nice chapter. Uruka I'm liking more and more as this series goes on. And yeah, like you said, it does seem as though Fumio is being kind of like taken out of this love triangle thing almost entirely.
Yeah, like she's moved into just the Ruri role of like.
Yeah. I mean, I like the way that this chapter went down, and yeah.
I wonder if it was sort of like an editorial decision to do this, though. Like, because it's like Takamoto came in essentially like immediately into things. Like it was like chapter 4 or something like that. She came in, so I have to wonder if it was like, hey, I like this idea you have, but I'm just not feeling it as much. Like, Fumino doesn't work for me. Why don't we put someone in there who's a bit more aggressive in things?
I actually think that it might be the opposite case.
Okay.
I think that maybe the idea was to have Uruka and Ogata from the beginning, have like a sporty girl and a nerdy girl. But then they were like, maybe if we play around more with the idea of going after things that aren't their specialties. And so then we could have, an English humanities specialist who wants to do science instead of this sporty girl. Well, can I keep the sporty girl and have her be the third girl? Sure, why not? Okay, chapter 3.
And then fuck it, she's just going to be the second girl after a while.
I don't know. I'm sure maybe we'll eventually find out more about that, how that worked out. Anyway, let's go over to the Promised Neverland, chapter 44, The Girl in the Hood. Last time a girl in the hood showed up, trying to beckon Emma's group to come with her, and we pick up there because Emma's still basically passed out from blood loss. She starts to lead them in a certain way, beckoning them to follow her. Gilda expresses suspicion, of course, because she's like, hey, who are you and why are you here? What are you? Why don't you show us your face? But before we really see anything, except for the fact that the girl in the hood smirks and is, we get away from that. And honestly, there's not a whole lot to the rest of the chapter. It's much more of an action sequence as Ray is trying to get away from the pursuers. And he's quickly analyzing what to do, what paths to take through the woods and stuff. And he's thinking back to, his time playing chess against Isabella. And he's thinking like, oh man, this, no matter what I do, it seems like I'm getting outmaneuvered. It's like playing chess against her. But I can't stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up, and I'm definitely not going to die. And it eventually ends with him just in a clearing, surrounded by 6 of the wolf-like demons. He's like, God damn it! There's got to be something I do. I've got to live. I've got to survive. One of the humanoid ones looks down on him and says, it's over. You need to give up now. You've put up a good fight, but it's over. Ray stumbles and trips trying to get away. And he's like, no, I've got to keep moving. I've got to do this. I've got to protect them. I've got to protect everyone. And I'll never give up. And
I know I should have played Dragon Chess instead of regular chess. It's so much more interesting with 3 different levels. You have to manage a flying stage and a ground stage as well as a subterranean stage. It's so much more intricate. God.
This is nothing like when I beat Spock in 3-dimensional chess.
I was the one who actually invented that 3D hologram chess they used in Star Wars. Chewbacca was using a rookie maneuver. That's why he lost. I would never let the Wookiee win.
Oh, hey, somebody on horseback pick me up.
Oh, thank goodness I'm not dead. Baby memory survive. Like that's what they hear in the distance as he's going on. He's like, my baby memory saved me yet again. Everyone's like, no, they didn't. Clearly someone on a horse saved you.
It's another cloaked figure. I don't think it's supposed to be the same cloaked woman. At least I don't think.
But it definitely looks to be an adult of some fashion. Like they look to be a full-sized.
And they're carrying a spear and riding around on this horse-like demon as they just swoop by and carry Ray off by the scruff of his neck almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been tough to say a whole lot about the Promised Neverland recently, but I'm okay with it. It's been okay. Let's just see what the resolution of all this is, more or less.
What is this leading to is really all it comes down to. And it hasn't been exceptional, especially in comparison to the stuff that we had before, in the end of the previous arc and everything like that. I'm really waiting for things to kind of get going again. Anyway, we don't have 7 Deadly Sins this week. There's nothing posted to Crunchyroll, so we don't have anything to talk about there. And we also don't have any One Piece this week. So we're just going to conclude on Black Clover. It's the end of the first round. Not the first round, rather, but the first match in the team competition. Tournament.
Team competition!
There you go. Mimosa and Asta are surrounded. Asta is paralyzed, and 3 different magic attacks are rushing in towards them from 3 different directions. Mimosa's got no way to block them. Everyone's like, oh my god, they're gonna get killed. And then suddenly 3 magic circles appear, intercepting all 3 attacks, absorbing them, and blasting them back. Pretty awesome, actually.
I love the king's face in this. It's just, like, he doesn't say anything, but this dude's reactions every time is 120% crazy. This dude has no control.
Well, the Wizard King right next to him is freaking out too.
We've seen he's like this like otaku for cool looking magic and shit. I just love seeing the king has no control over himself. He's always like, oh my god! Like, he's not saying anything, but you know that's what he's saying.
Kind of waiting for him to foam at the mouth like that one character in Avatar: The Last Airbender, which you're not familiar with. But.
I know the gif.
Yeah. And also, I do like the little touch where as the magic circles pop up, we get that little shot of Zerk's his eyes opening from his nap. And so the magic gets blasted back at their 3 opponents. And when the dust settles, Zerks gets up and he's like, well, that worked. And he just kind of strolls out, goes to the rock magic user, as all 3 of them are laid out. The crystal's only barely protected. And he's like, oh, hey, I thought that I would actually be able to break the crystal while I was at it, but you managed to keep the crystal intact and you're still conscious. So good job. Although it looks like you guys are on your last legs. Anyway, just steps on his head.
I like how he says it. He's like, well, of course I should take the shortest path possible to the crystal. It just happens to walk over your face.
And the guy is like, I'll never let someone as innocent as you. And Zerk just says, yeah, and guess who you lost to? Me. And he says, you're short on imagination when it comes to unknown magic. Magic knights have to consider every possibility when they fight, you moron. If people could win by getting all fired up and launching monster-sized spells, life would be easy. Anyone who loses to me doesn't deserve to be called a magic knight. And Ash kind of is surrounding him as he goes on this tirade against the guy, and Mimosa recognizes, hey, if it's Ash magic, then that means he's actually the guy who used the trap spell earlier that got Asta. And there's a very weird kind of moment because Zerk stands in the guy's head. He's like, this is game over, so try again some other time, maggots. Actually, no, I'm not here to win. I'm here for another reason. The guy's like, what do you mean? It's like,
it is like a weird sequence of events. He's like, time to lose your crystal. Nah, I'm not actually going to do it. It's like, I did, boom! It's just like, what was... It was a real roller coaster of emotions to a page.
Okay. So all the spectators are like, that was really weird magic that the guy was using. Yeah, he like absorbed his opponent's magic that powered them up and sent them back. And the king is like, I don't really get it, but that was amazing.
Oh, it was incredible. I'm like, hold on, his face needs to be growing. That was amazing! Like, it's like, that was amazing! Like, you know those shitty fucking like meme videos that Truth did for a while, Truth.com, when they were trying to be like, if you lose if you smoke, you're gonna lose all the cool cat videos on the internet. And it was just loud noises and fucking like effects going. I assume that's what goes on behind the king at all times, because he's got to have that like over the top reaction. Like, there's always like as he's talking in the background for some reason like a cat riding a Roomba with like fucking like Skrillex music playing behind him and shit.
Anyway, so Zerx goes back over to Mimosa and Asta, and he's like, "Hey, good team play. You were a great lure." So Asta, of course, is pissed off at the guy. He grabs him by the collar, and he's like, "What the hell is up with you? Why would you do that to another Magic Knight? The other team was amazing too." Okay. And Zerx is just like, "Whatever, they lost. Our teamwork beat theirs, so be happy about that." And Asta's like, "What the fuck do you mean teamwork? Your magic was that trap that I stepped into," which is bizarrely insightful for us, actually. And Zerg's just like, "Hey, I set a trap. I used you as a lure." And what is it? If he says, "You know what they say? If you want to fool your enemies, first fool your friends." And he basically, ash magic comes out of his collar. It's kind of like, you know,
the Mr. Fuji's pocket full of sand.
Or like the squirty flower kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so it goes in Asta's eyes, and he's just like,
I do love that exchange. Like, he's just like, I have the shittiest, like, most heel tactic just built into my collar just for people who annoy me like you, who try to get aggressive on me.
Mimosa analyzes the guy's abilities and says he probably seals magic effects and objects to terrain by drawing magic circles and then uses certain conditions to activate them. I have no idea how he drew that circle that Asta stepped into without it moving from the starting point. But okay. So he had a trap earlier set up, and he also had a counter trap spell that sent back the magic back with its speed and force doubled. And then he set up a continuous trap so that he could... No, sorry. I saw counter trap and yeah.
Actually, I was kind of curious about this. Is this something that's been established and I just kind of forgot that like there's a side of magic outside of whatever your chosen book specialty is that you could just access? Because it's not as though like they say like ash magic is inherently a trap magic or something like that. It seems as though he created traps. Like the paralyzation one seemed to be something that fit with the ash theme, but it doesn't seem like there was any ash element at all to the reflection magic. So is that really something that anyone could potentially do?
I think that's something that is deliberately going only partially explained so far. You know, because Mimosa says like, "Hey, you know, you cast a really powerful trap spell back there, and that must have taken a tremendous amount of mana and time. When did you set it up? Because you were asleep the whole time." And Xerxes just like, "That's my secret. Men must be mysterious." So there is still something that we don't know about this as to how he set this up. In terms of the whole circles thing, it's because we have seen, you know, like summoning circles, or well, they're not really summoning circles yet, but we have seen magic circles used. But it is something that hasn't been a very common thing up to this point. Black Clover.
Mm. And then Annalise brings up a point. There are things like mana skin and flying with brooms that are universal sort of traits with them.
Right. Anyway, Asta's still obviously pissed off about Zerx. He's shouting about it. He's like, "You should tell us everything! Everything!" Anyway, the next team competition... round of the team competition is happening. Magna and Sol are having to team up as we established earlier. Sol refers to him as Funglassinquent because she is abbreviating Funny Glasses Delinquent. Anyway.
All right.
And they're having to team up with Kirsch Vermilion, who is Mimosa's older brother. And he's like, "You are not beautiful. Do not mar my beauty." So,
Nick, please. I get he may not be a big deal now, but sometime later his time will run up, but he'll get like a revitalization when he teams up with Fandango and forms the Fashion Police, and we get like a new comedic revelation for the character. We realize there's a lot of talent here that just was kind of underutilized originally.
What do you mean? Well, what do you mean we'll realize? I always knew Tyler Breeze was awesome. Don't rope me in with you.
Smark.
Should have been an NXT champion.
Should have.
Great.
He was very awesome. I dig what we're getting out of Xerx. There's a unique kind of element to him that I find interesting. I'm curious if like we're gonna get every round of this. I imagine we probably won't because there's a lot of matchups. It seems like there was very like only tangentially interesting people involved in the team. But I am kind of like interested to see what this is like going to get into.
I'm very pleased by this chapter because we're getting more of like Xerxes' philosophy, or fake Xerxes. I guess I should clarify philosophy in all of this. And you get more and more the feeling that this isn't a guy that's just going to show up for one arc and then just go away forever. He might be a villain. He might be an ally. We don't really know yet, but he seems like a guy who's going to actually stick around for a while because we're getting to know him more than instead of just, throwing him into a fight and then he loses that fight and bye. So, but that's it. So I guess we'll wrap up with naming our favorites for this week, MVPs, and favorite series.
Yeah. So, man, favorite chapter is tough.
I'll start off.
Yeah.
My favorite was Shudan this week. I really liked the chapter. It was these last 2 weeks. Shut up, Chris.
No, I'm immediately like, I should just piss off Jeff again by being like, Shudan was okay, but we never learned was really the top this week.
It was also a good chapter, but I want to shoot on. I mean, like, the first time that I read through it, I was like, geez, that was just really good. I just had a really raw kind of emotional reaction to it. It was, the way that it was funny at the beginning and it was really emotional and satisfying at the end. And then the very, very end had that unexpected little interaction between Akira and Soshi. So dug it.
I could dig that. I could dig that. I don't know if we never learned. Now I'm gonna say My Hero Academia. I really think this is an intriguing chapter with a lot of promise to it. I like that we're kind of getting into one Fat Gum, who's kind of been building himself more and more up to be like a really interesting mentor kind of character. And I also like that we're getting back into Kirishima again. It doesn't feel like he's just gonna be like this side character floating around with interest. They're really putting him into a more significant role. So I'm really interested to see what they kind of do with that.
And MVP, Rindo.
Yeah, it's Rindo. Rindo got
awesome.
A lot of focus. It was great.
So that is it. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us. We tend to normally record Weekly Manga Recap Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at smashcast.tv/RollOT and twitch.tv/RollOT. But sometimes we needed to change things up, start a little bit later, maybe even record at a different time. And you can stay updated on all that stuff by following us on Twitter. At WMR Podcast is the official account for the podcast. You can also follow your hosts at RollOT and at YRollerOfTime. You can also check out our past episodes, weeklymangarecap.podbean.com, youtube.com/weeklymangarecap, and on iTunes. And if you check out those latter two, make sure to do your, leave a rating, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Help us out so that we can beat the woodworkers in the hobby section of the podcasts. Also, be sure to send a mail to weeklymangarecap@yahoo.com. You can give us feedback. You can ask us questions for a future Q&A episode. And you can suggest manga for us to read as well.
Right. I have a recommendation I have to do.
You're supposed to do a recommendation, but you can... Well,
no, I got it, because we're going to have to, so fuck it. Our next recommendation, because it's eventually going to happen, let's just get it out of the way. We're going to do Rave Master. We'll do Rave Master next, so this way we have the time to get through it by the time Fairy Tail comes to a conclusion. So
fair enough.
Boom.
It's good. Anyhow, special thanks go out to our Patreon supporters who support us to create all sorts of bonus content for you guys to enjoy. We are hopefully going to be having our commentary in the next few days, but also we did our As Explained by Manga discussion for the bonus pod as well. Record that recently.
That'll be up hopefully tomorrow. If not, it might go up Friday. I apologize for the delay on it, but I've been very busy with schoolwork, so I just haven't had the time to sit down and get the editing process out. But it should be up very, very soon.
It's lost as explained by Manga, as Nick gets confusing things explained to him.
The worst part is like every moment after since then, I've been like, I could have mentioned that. I should have mentioned that. I should have brought that up as like another like way to connect it to Manga. I've been very critical of myself, which makes sense.
Here Nick reacts to the explanation. Of the flash sideways.
Yeah, in retrospect, they should have gone about that a different way. I feel like I really created a problem with that. Anyways, that'll be up very soon, though. It's going to be a really fun episode with a lot of fun moments in there. So go check that out when it goes up.
And last but not least, check out the guys who help us make the podcast what it is. Steve Mann, our talk artist, does all sorts of stuff in many different locations, honestly. He's got DeviantArt, which is New Rock Fanboy. And he's got his own Patreon. Check that out at patreon.com/SteveMann, where you can check out the title cards that he has done for the show, as well as some not safe for work stuff if you become a patron of his. And also Infamous Planet for making the frame that you see on the video editions of the podcast.
There's a point in time where I felt safe because, like, well, I'm not at a job anymore. Like, I don't look at my phone while I'm at like my grocery store job, so I'm like, I don't have to worry about like scrolling through Twitter and everyone seeing it. And I was like at school, like I was in class before it started. I was about to go on Twitter. I was like, you know what? Steve Mann may have posted something recently. I'm just gonna put this away. I'm just gonna chill out here,
just to be safe.
Yeah.
That's going to do it, everyone. So we will see you next time here on Weekly Manga Recap, yeah?
So, just a moment ago, I heard something outside my window, and I went out there.
I thought I heard it.
Yeah, so there's just a note on my window, and it's shaped like a Digivice, and it just says, "You're next" on it with a knife through it. Do you think Jeff maybe heard my thoughts about Shudan this week, and he's making his opinion known?
I don't know. Maybe Goldberg's just really into Digimon now.
That would be so awesome. Like, Goldberg comes out and he's like in an Agumon cosplay and he's just like, "You're next, Pepper Breath." Oh!
It's okay. You just have to run away from him for about 5 minutes and then he'll be done.
He's like, "Oh, whew, you're so fast." It's like, you just got up
I've
the
just
stairs.
been lightly jogging.
Oh. Ooh, I'm like, weren't you a football player? How is your cardio this bad?
You take breaks after 30 seconds when you play football.
Bye, everybody.